Today we're in the beautiful Umbrian countryside between Montegabbione and Parrano, where I have the pleasure of meeting with our clients Joaquin and Bo at their beautiful property Pian di Scale. We'll meet them shortly. See you at the property. Okay, so here we are with Joaquin and Bo. First off, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Thank you for having us. So we are Joaquin and Bo. I'm originally from Argentina. I lived for a long time in the US, and I actually lived in Europe as well. And Bo is from Malaysia. We both live in Hong Kong. I think, Bo, you may want to talk about our little one.
We have a little dog.
Oh.
That's in Hong Kong. He hasn't seen the house yet, but we plan on bringing him next year.
So, we love to travel. We have busy careers, but we try to balance that with traveling. We love eating. Bo's a very good cook, and we love eating vegetables. And so yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Fantastic. How did you come to learn about Great Estate?
So, we had this idea of buying a house in Europe for a long time, because we wanted a place where, I have family in Argentina, we have family in the US, Bo has family in Malaysia, and we have friends all over the place. And so we wanted to have a place where everybody can get together in the summer, in the winter, and so, but it was an idea that we weren't chasing very aggressively. And we have a friend of ours who we trust, and they were much more committed to buying a house, and they bought a house nearby here. And so we leveraged all of their experience, and they loved the experience with Great Estate. And I think having a partner, when you're buying a house in a foreign country, having a partner that you can trust, particularly when you're going to buy, from whatever 10,000 kilometers away,
Sure.
You need to have somebody here that you trust, and it was instant connection with them. In my profession, I dealt with a lot of big purchases and a lot of contracts, and with a lot of people and advisors and consultants and intermediaries, and I developed a little bit of a sense for who's on your side, who's not, who's professional, who's adding value, who's not. And Roberto immediately, he was very, very professional. And let me explain you what that means, because it's not just that he knew the roads around, which he did, but importantly, he actually, we didn't have a lot of time to actually look at houses. We were here for a reasonably short period of time. It just happened also to be the time where everybody's looking for houses, so Roberto was super busy. But in just the days that we had to look at houses, he actually designed a schedule to see houses that were perhaps a little bit extreme from each other, but with the goal of trying to really understand what we wanted. And I actually seen it from the distance. It was an amazing experience, because there were some places that we saw, and we are like, no way that that this is something for us. And there are some places where it's like, oh, we like these things, but not these other things. And so he very smartly sort of created a funnel to end up in the place, because there's lots of beautiful places, but not every place for everybody.
Of course.
And then the other thing that I think Roberto did incredibly well was trying to really explain to us the uniqueness of buying a place in Italy, because it is a unique place, and there are regulations, there is legal issues, there is the role of the notary, there is all of these things. And I am one of these people that I need to know everything, and I'm very detailed, and just by virtue of my profession, and therefore I wasn't short in asking questions, and Roberto was very, very, very patient. And
I'd like to add that Roberto was also really good in the pre-work before we came to Italy. He spent a lot of time doing video calls with us, sent us a lot of links to houses, so he already got a little bit of a feel of what we wanted to see and what we liked. So that was really helpful.
Good. Joaquin, so in addition to Roberto, you had the opportunity to meet also with our CEO, Stefano Petri. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the relationship with Stefano as well?
It's interesting, because not always it happens that you end up meeting more than one person. in a transaction like this, and I feel that I met a lot of people at Great Estate, and they have one thing in common, which is they're actually very attent and they want to make things work, and they're very good at thinking ahead about what can go right and what maybe we have to discuss ahead of time. Sure. And in this process, I met a lot of the team, but particularly with Stefano, we built a great relationship because Stefano is an entrepreneur. You could tell he has great ambition to build a large business, to scale, and and in my career, I work with a lot of companies that that have big visions, and so we developed an instant connection. Stefano was not only a figurehead, but he was also very helpful in getting the transaction done. He stepped in when it was need to have a negotiation. And so I appreciated the fact that he actually added value to the transaction. And to be honest, at this stage, now living here, spending time here, I think that I will continue to have a relationship with both Roberto and Stefano.
Well, question for Roberto. What will you remember about your experience with Joaquin and Bo?
A great experience, really. Of course, as Joaquin said, we had let's say, an easier connection because the word by mouth is always a very, let's say, special introduction, let's say, from a client and big friends who already purchased, because it was a very close, let's say, introduction. We always try to do things at best for all the clients. Then it depends on the, let's say, on the size of the transaction. This was a kind of big deal. We have, let's say, as usual, created a kind of teamwork in order to provide to Joaquin and Bo the best support in every step of the transaction. He wants to know everything because he's able to understand. If you explain things, he doesn't need, let's say, a lawyer or someone to explain him the things. So there was a very direct contact because he wants to understand the process, how it works, the process in Italy, the key person, how it works, what is the, let's say, the current market, the ideas, the process of, especially the key things to complete the sale, like the urban town planning compliance, which is something that probably is underestimated from abroad because there are different rules, and it was a big step, was the key step to overtake for all of us, okay, except for the price agreement. And we did it in the end because we find the right person, like architect Laura Terziani, which was incredibly helpful under this point of view, and the lawyer Mariangela Marangoni, who explained, I mean, and with which we drafted the purchase offer draft, the Lloyd drafts, and the Notaio Migliori from Perugia, which was very helpful as well. So we created this teamwork, which probably I have coordinated a little bit, let's say, also for the timings and scheduled video calls. We actually had many video calls with Joaquin, I really remember, and many detailed emails because he wanted to know everything in place. And the other thing that he mentioned is the fact that we always try to individuate, I mean, the possible issues, issues in a negotiation. You have a kind of visualize what can be, and you have to work on this side to, let's say, to analyze, to study, to analyze them, and to bring to the client, to Joaquin and Bo in this case, the possible solution to overtake the problem. So always a positive, a proactive mindset, which they have, of course, because you need to have this in order to find solution. Go ahead and complete this fantastic purchase together.
Sounds like you were very prepared, and so that was actually a question I had, was about, obviously, as Roberto said, the lawyer and the architect played a very important role. So architect Terziani and lawyer Marangoni, they played a very important role. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how they were helpful?
No, absolutely. And the first thing I'd say is I don't call them by their last names. I call them by their first names because we became, so friendly, after so much interaction. So let me start maybe with Laura, because as Roberto said, Laura played an incredible role. There are lots of regulations in Italy that relate to the architecture of the house, depending on where the house is located. I've learned through this process where the house is located and whether you're talking about some architectural compliance issue or some renovation which is not in the registry, or whether you're talking about a hydrological issue or so on. The one thing I'd say about Laura is, she had not been for Laura, this purchase would have not happened, because she really found solutions to complex problems. Number two is, while I'm saying all of this, there's complications and so on and so forth. What I felt throughout this process is that they turned something which may be very complicated into something very simple. So to me, at the end of the day, I just had to sit back. They talk amongst themselves, they figure things out, and they made it happen. And for me, I was totally an spectator. They are the ones that made it happen, which was great, because at the end of the day, I am a busy person, and this was not, my primary activity. With regards to Mariangela, I mean, I dealt with a lot of lawyers in my career, and I still do. And lawyers could be very, very good in closing a transaction, or could be a little bit getting in the way. Mariangela knew exactly what she had to discuss with me. I placed my trust on her to the point that I signed a power of attorney. She was my representative with regards to the entire transaction here. And again, she made something which, arguably could be very complex into something very simple. We decided, for example, not to write an English contract. It's an Italian contract, which had a convenience, English translation, and so ultimately the contract is in Italian. But she explained me all the differences, and I got comfortable, and so it was actually a very painless process for me.
That's fantastic. So with that being said, would you say that Great Estate was helpful, was by your side, even in the after sale?
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for asking that question, because at the end of the day, the experience of just buying the house is the beginning, and it could, could start a big, problem, or it could start, a big enjoyment. And it was the latter for us. There are lots of things that need to happen. For example, we have to have people looking after the house, and they were very helpful in helping us, make sure that they were happy. We understood what it took to hire, people in the country. What I really appreciated about, Great Estate, it wasn't about just getting the sale done and disappear. And that's why we built this relationship that, that I'm sure is just the beginning of, and we'll continue to have for years to come.
Very good. I'm very happy to hear that. I have a question for Suzanne, who managed the vendor clients. Suzanne, would you like to tell us a little bit about the negotiation process and the different aspects of that?
I'll start from the beginning. The client is Dutch, and he contacted us. I think he contacted me directly because he was only looking for a Dutch real estate agent in Italy.
Okay.
Because he didn't want to have problems with languages in Italian and English. So
sure.
I was very happy that he came to a Great Estate, to me. And we put it for sale. And there were some issues because he bought a room and he totally renovated it. There was nothing over here. It was just a field, so it was really complicated. And he asked permissions, but when he wanted to sell, we had to find the good permissions that he made, the authorizations that he made. And that was not easy, because sometimes something changes, renews, and it was a lot of
sure.
work. But we were very happy to have this for sale. And I can tell you so many details about the things he had, the lines that he put, the pavement he has over there. It's really, everything has a history. It's not just a line, but for him it was really important, something we started. And also what Bo said about the kitchen is really something that I developed with a lot of interest and a lot of good people, and what else can I tell you? The negotiation was not easy because they know what they have been spending on the house and how much they would get back. So for them it was not the easiest way to sell something where they'd worked for a long time. And then we had Stefano helping us with the progress, and his experience and his professionality and his expertise is really good and pointing to the right direction every time. And yeah, I think together with the whole team from Great Estate, it was possible to do this. If you see all the people who are behind it,
Yes,
the architect, the engineer, everybody who's working with it, and all the legal and technical advisors, it's really important to have a good team to make this work. And I'm also really proud to be part of this team, that we can say, okay, if we have something good, we can make it happen. That's important, that it's something that really works. Yeah,
Definitely.
and I'm happy
definitely.
for Mo and for Joachim that they going to finish this project and to enjoy it. It's really important to know this. Yeah.
Well, one last question to wrap up. Or I guess I'll give the floor to you if you would like to tell us just about overall, would you recommend Great Estate, our group, to friends, to family, to potential clients looking to purchase a property in Italy?
You know, not only would I recommend them, I would not advise any of my friends to buy a property in Italy other than through Great Estate. In fact, since I bought this property, now there have been several of my friends that, you know, want to buy places nearby and create a bit of a, you know, variation and so on. And so yeah, no, absolutely. And we had a great experience. You know, I recommend anybody that is looking at making an investment and a transaction of this magnitude to really think hard about who do they want to have on their side, because it is not trivial. They make it easy, but it's actually, you know, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of teamwork, a lot of, you know, professionalism to get something so complicated, you know, seem so easy. So I want to thank you both very much.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Well, congratulations again on your new property, on
Thank you.
Spectacular property. Thank you for your testimony today. Thank you, Roberto and Suzanne, also for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you at the next Great Estate interview.